What is going on, everybody? Tyler Brand back here with another video, and in today's video we are going to talk about three of the more intriguing, probably the most intriguing players headed now into padded practices that are on my radar, at least for this year's Patriots camp. Two of which are pretty much, I think, locks to make the final 53-man roster, and one of them I think is a real long shot, but seems to be a fan favorite and a crowd favorite, especially among fans and even in the media too. So we're going to talk about three different guys, what their impacts could be, what we could see from them throughout camp, and their expectations headed into 2020. Now, before we get into these three guys, the one thing I want you to remember if you're watching this is that training camp this year is going to be immensely different, and you probably know that already, but here's the breakdown of what the difference is really in camp and why for a lot of the UDFAs, the undrafted free agents, and a lot of the real long shots to make the roster, it's just a bad year to be in the NFL or to be not a lock for a roster in the NFL. And first of all, in a regular training camp, you would have, pretty much an unlimited amount of padded practices, as many as you could really muster up between preseason games. You'd have joint practices with other teams. You'd have actual preseason games. You'd have really a lot of unlimited opportunities for guys to get on tape in real games, get on tape in practice. There'd be a ton of opportunities for a lot of guys to make a name for themselves. Now, in COVID 2020 training camps, there is no joint practices. There is no preseason games, which means that a ton of, UDFAs and a ton of, back end of the roster guys have no opportunity or very limited opportunity to get on tape. There's no joint practices. There's no way for guys to get up and in real NFL competition. So unfortunately, that's going to hurt a lot of guys. And beyond that, even in the legitimate padded practices, there's only 14 of them. So starting Monday, New England is going to have 14 padded practices, and then it's off to the regular season. So for New England and a lot of teams around the league, there are a bunch of really feel-good stories that are really cool. But I think that everybody around, in the media, everybody that's fans of a team, myself included, we have to keep in check the fact that there's going to be very, very limited opportunity for some of these back end of the roster guys to really have a fair shot to make a 53-man roster. Not saying they can and there's no chance, but it's going to be very, very, very tough. So just keep that in mind. The theme of this video is that there's 14 days of padded practices of legit sort of NFL type of experience for a lot of these rookies and younger players. But without any further ado, I've been rambling for a little bit. Let's get into the three intriguing players I'm excited to watch over the next couple weeks of padded practices. So the first guy on the list, I didn't really gauge how much of a role he was going to have, but over the last couple days, and ever since Marcus Cannon opted out, I've been really looking at Yadni Kajus, the backup swing tackle for New England, who is looking like he's really going to have a shot to not only crack the 53-man roster, which I expect him to do if he stays healthy, but to supplant himself in the starting lineup, which I think is very, very intriguing. Now, I'm going to start with the things that jump off the page about Yadni Kajus, and that is just quite simply that he's a monster strong. He's got unbelievable strength. He's only allowed 4 sacks in college in 1,125 snaps. So he's only allowed 4 sacks in over 1,000 snaps. And even to get that to the next level, I think he's only allowed like 12 or 13 quarterback pressures over all those snaps. So when he was healthy in the Big 12 against some pretty legit competition, he dominated. He was very, very good. And yesterday in the post-practice media session, Shaq Mason was one of the guys that had a media session, and they actually asked, it was Evan Lazar from CLNS Media, Evan Lazar actually asked him, what does he think about Yadni Kajus? He asked Shaq Mason that, and he basically said that he was looking ready and that everyone is excited to see what he can do. So clearly, there is expectations for him in the locker room. There's expectations for him in the media. So I think he's probably, and he should be projected to take a step forward and possibly really bolster a spot in this offensive line. Now, a little bit of a backstory on Cajuste. Again, he's been very, very injured. He tore his ACL in college. He had a couple knee injuries in college. And even in 2019, he was drafted by New England in the 3rd round, but he was placed on IR on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform, for all of 2019. He wasn't even a thought in 2019. But, New England spends a 3rd round pick, so they clearly see a lot of good in him. In 2020 now, he's healthy. He's ready to be a part of camp. New England's waited for him. They've kept him around. They haven't really... He's not one of those guys that have been waived and added, waived and added. He's been, a surefire guy for New England, at least to hold on to for the last year. So he comes in. He's got a lot of momentum to kind of get into that starting lineup and get some real snaps under him. And even beyond that, where he really shined, at least early on in his college career, and especially as he's grown, is as a run blocker, especially in a run-heavy, offense. So I think that kind of seeing and getting an idea of what New England wants to do in 2020, I think they're going to be very run-centered. I think between signing Miller, Sony Michel at some point being healthy, Damian Harris, I expect to get a good chunk of snaps. Rex Burkhead, he offered and they agreed on a restructured contract, but they could have just cut him and saved him a couple $1 million. So I think, especially between those running backs, I think New England's going to want to run the ball a lot. And I think Cajuste, at least as a run blocker, can step in if he's healthy and really dominate in the run game. I think he has to grow a little bit as a pass protector, but he can instantly come into the lineup as a run blocker and make this offensive line better, really. I mean, without Cannon. And I even think if Cajuste plays a really good right tackle, then he has the opportunity to take the spot from Marcus Cannon, who has been around the league and who has been in the league for a while, and he is getting up there in age. So I think Cajuste really has an opportunity to not only, have a spot in 2020, but going forward as the Patriots right tackle. Now I want to talk about somebody that I honestly didn't think was going to be a huge part of the Patriots 2020 team, but as things have kind of morphed over the last couple weeks between opt-outs and everything else, I really think Kyle Dugger has an opportunity to come in and make an immediate impact on the defensive side of the ball for New England. I think that Dugger has all the physical tools to be a good to very good safety in the NFL. I think watching him on tape, he's a loudmouth downhill player. He can get involved at every level of the defense, and he can be effective at every level of the defense. But I think the trouble for him in 2020 is going to be adjusting to NFL game speed and NFL talent. And unfortunately, while a guy like him comes in with a real opportunity to wreak havoc, without having a preseason, without having any joint practices, he's virtually not going to have a lot of time to adjust to NFL talent. I mean, New England, you expect them to run probably legitimate scrimmages of offense versus defense. They're probably going to run some real game scenarios, but it's going to be hard for him to really get some real NFL speed snaps without a preseason. So that's what I think hinders him the most. But at a next level, I think there's going to be opportunities for him to get into the lineup. And by what I mean by saying that is that Patrick Chung, who opted out, he logged 454 snaps last season between an in-the-box safety and a slot corner, which I think are two places that Dugger can line up early on. He showed it in the Senior Bowl against some legit D1 NFL talent, so I think he could line up there. And the next two guys on the depth chart that would be there with him in that safety room are both Terrence Brooks and Adrian Phillips. They combined logged only 400 snaps between an in-the-box safety and a slot corner. Now, granted, Phillips was in, I believe, L.A. with the Chargers, and, Terrence Brooks was essentially the, third or fourth safety on the roster for New England and was kind of a, scheme guy, was in certain plays and had certain, ideas for him. But there is obviously, you see those two numbers, and there's going to be room for him to find spots in the lineup. So I think Dugger, if he can adjust to speed and adjust to NFL talent quickly, instantly can come up and do some things, especially in the box, that I'm not sure that Terrence Brooks and Adrian Phillips can do. Now, the final person on this list we are going to talk about is the rookie wide receiver from the University of Miami. That is Jeff Thomas. Now, I know everybody on social media, I know people in the Patriots media, and I know fans are freaking out about how good Jeff Thomas is. And I understand he's, athletically gifted. I understand he's got excellent acceleration. I understand everything about all as the athletic gifts. And I know even on a bad offense in Miami, he put up some pretty impressive numbers, and he was a very good wide receiver. But I also think, looking at him as a whole package, first of all, I think as athletically gifted as he is, his route tree is a little weak. I think it needs to be developed a little bit. As far as I see, he's a straight line burner, especially in man coverage. He's going to get behind the defense a lot of the time. He's going to be able to give himself enough space to make a play on the ball, especially because he doesn't really have the body type to go up and take a 50-50 ball or use his body to get in a position. So he uses that speed and athleticism to do that. But the route tree, I think, is pretty underdeveloped, and I think he needs a little bit of polish at the next level. Now, I think he can do that in training camp, but I also think there's a lot working against him, just looking at it in real life. Now, again, the theme of this video has been 14 padded practices, no joint practices, no preseason games. That gives him very, very limited time to put good stuff on tape for the Patriots coaches and Bill Belichick and the guys that'll make the final 53. There's no other way to look at that other than that. Now, again, going down to the next level here, New England has really, especially over the last 6, 7, 8 years, looking back through archived rosters, they've never carried more than, a lot of the times, 5 receivers on the roster. Sometimes it's been 6. There's even 1 or 2 times where it's been 7. So if it gets to, a number like 7, I could see how maybe he would sneak in. But you also have to take into account, Lamar Miller is a new pass catcher that's probably going to make the roster. Dalton Keene is a guy that is a pass catcher, tight end, H-back, fullback that's going to make the roster. Jakob Johnson is probably going to make the roster. Those are 3 pass catchers and potential pass catchers that are going to take wide receiver spots off the depth chart. So now you look at, maybe they take 5, maybe 6 into the regular season. Jules is going to get a spot, Julian Edelman. Mohamed Sanu is going to get a spot for sure. We know that. N'Keal Harry's going to get a spot. We know that. Matthew Slater is a captain on the team. You know he's going to get a spot. So that essentially leaves 1 to 2 guys. Now, can you say in 14 practices against only Patriot defenders, can he put up enough good tape, which is going to be tough for anybody in any team, on any team? Can he put up enough tape to beat out Damiere Byrd, who is in a lot of ways the same receiver as Jeff Thomas, just with NFL experience and experience with Cam Newton? Can he beat out a guy like that and a guy like Jacoby Myers, who has also had a year in the Patriots system already? So the deck is so stacked against even a guy as athletically gifted as Jeff Thomas. If he does make the roster, and if he does have 14 fantastic practices and puts a lot on tape, and maybe he is the next elite level of athleticism at the wide receiver level, but I just think that the odds of anything against any undrafted free agent are stacked so high. So I don't see where he makes the roster like everyone else, or like a lot of people think that he may have a shot. But I'm rooting for him. If he makes New England a better team, then I'd love to have him on the 53-man roster. To wrap up Jeff Thomas, I was trying to think of ways that he would make the roster, maybe on something like as just a special teamer, as a return specialist, something like that. But even looking at that, that's a potentially crowded area. I mean, with Gunnar Olszewski, he's returned kicks and punts, and we don't even know if he's going to make the final 53. Kyle Duggar, who's probably a lock, he's returned kicks and punts. Julian Edelman has returned kicks and punts. So again, even on that aspect, it's very, very loaded. So it's going to be a long shot. Again, if it makes New England a better team to have him on the 53, good for him and good for New England. But really, the deck is so stacked against someone like him or any undrafted free agent in the NFL in 2020. I leave you with one last note in terms of any of these, not all of the guys on this list, but any, back end of the roster guy, and just a thought that it's sad because of the way the world is right now, but just put this in perspective. Guys like Jadeveon Clowney and someone like, until Wednesday evening, Everson Griffin, it took them months. It took them until August to find a spot on an NFL roster. Now, maybe I'm not the biggest Jadeveon Clowney guy in the room, I understand that, but he's still a good defensive player, and he doesn't have a team in August. So just put that in perspective with any undrafted free agent, any back end of the roster guy. It is going to be tremendously hard for any of these guys to have a real shot in the NFL this season. It's tough, and it sucks, but it's just, unfortunately, the cold, hard truth of the matter. But that is going to do it for another video here on the channel. Follow me on Twitter at @TheTylerBrant, on Instagram at TalkingPats for more stuff on the Patriots. You know, again, be happy to chop it up with anybody on any social media about New England. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about these guys? Kajus, what do you think about Duggar? What do you think about Jeff Thomas? I know a lot of people love Jeff Thomas, and I get it. But, you know, what do you think of the COVID camps? What did you think? Did you watch the Patriots stream the other day? And, you know, get at me. Let me know. Drop it in the comments down below. Thank you, everybody that's subscribing. Again, we grow every day. I appreciate your subscription to the channel. Again, we're growing. You know, this team is getting bigger every single day. And one last thing before I wrap it up. The wall behind me, the Patriot wall. It's looking pretty complete. It's hard for me to really give you great detail in this video, especially because I'm so far back from the wall. But I can post, and I will post, you know, a little bit of a higher quality image or a few images on Twitter and on Instagram. We'll try to figure the wall thing out. Maybe we can get it in better focus. But again, until next time, be safe, be good. I'm Tyler Brandt, and I'll catch you on the next video.